What's wrong with this current generation being born? Honestly, if we're going to be real, is they were raised by people who didn't understand emotional intelligence.
She's 100% right. Studies have found that the baby boomer generation as a whole is the most hypersensitive of any of the generations so far, which means they have the most narcissistic tendencies. And a lot of the studies I found went as far as to throw Gen Xers into the mix with boomers on that. I think it's hilariously ironic anytime boomers or Gen Xers complain about Gen Z. I'm a Gen Z who actually does have boomer parents, and they're pretty cool. But anytime I do something like really weird, my mom will jokingly be like, "Why are you this way?" And I'm like, who do you think raised me? Like, whose fault is that? Who's responsible for all these kids acting this way? Interestingly enough, studies show that as you age, your narcissistic tendencies are supposed to like soften and go away, hopefully. You know, because you're getting older and you have a better view of the world, and hopefully you're getting more empathetic. So yes, younger generations are always going to come off more narcissistic leaning than older generations, but an interesting study about the younger generations as of late is that we're like declining quicker into that empathetic, less narcissistic state than any of the generations before us. And I would assume an interesting thing that attributes to that heavily would be the amount of younger generations who are more willing to seek out therapy and self-growth. As you can see, the people in talk therapy, the boomers are this gray, the Gen Xers are this lighter color, and Gen Z is this one right here. And it made sense to me that more older people are taking medications in general because you need to take more medications when you get older. But overall, according to the CDC, millennials and Gen Zs are kicking boomers and Gen Xers' butts when it comes to taking care of our mental health and trying to figure out how to fix our own issues so that we don't project them onto the next generation and call them all narcissists. I think another thing that ties into this interesting therapy fact is that when Gen Zs themselves were polled, they self-reported as thinking that their generation was more narcissistic leaning than others. The studies deducted from that Gen Z is actually less narcissistic than other generations because narcissists can't identify that they're narcissists. So that implies that they had more empathy to see how others were reacting poorly. So Gen Zs being able to like call out each other and hold other people more accountable actually meant that they're less narcissistic and more empathetic. And some studies even found that boomers might be more narcissistic than other generations because they grew up in a time when the government provided them a ton of privileges like social security and things that we don't have today. So boomers and older generations will often ironically whine and complain about how it seems like younger generations are just sitting around complaining and call us entitled for asking for like bare minimum human rights and privileges that you guys all had. I think that if we took all of your privileges away, you'd be complaining a bit too, Boomy. I know these findings didn't really include millennials as much and only talked about boomers, Gen X, and Gen Z, but Gen Z and millennials line up on a lot of things. So I'm going to throw you the bone on this one here and say that a lot of you line up with this one too.